it off. Hello,
Yo.
friends, family, and strangers. Welcome to Yeah, But Are You Happy? It's a podcast about the intersection of creativity and mental health. For those of you watching at home, I don't think we're showing up on the Twitch channel visually. Okay, now half of us is here. We're getting there. Oh, that's so weird.
Whoa, what is happening?
Oh boy. Okay, I'm here now. I'm visible. Sorry, we're gonna have to cut this out on the audio and just hey, welcome to Yeah, But Are You Happy? The
There we go.
podcast about the intersection of mental health and creativity and comedy and all of the things that exist. I'm Katie Stone. I am a copywriter and comedian living with bipolar 2 disorder in Los Angeles, California. Lane, who are you?
Hey, I'm Lane Ingram, and I'm a therapist in Austin, and I have a private practice, and I'm also a comedy performer, and I'm on psych meds for anxiety and possible ADD. And hey, we're gonna talk today. We're gonna talk about paying dues. This is a topic that popped into the conversation last time, and it sounded like it would be a fun one for today. And I feel like shit. Is it okay to just shoehorn in my mental health check-in? Just bam, coming in hot.
Tell me, what's going on?
I feel I've been getting the worst sleep lately. I think it's I have sleep apnea and I have a CPAP machine. And I think what I might be realizing is that I'm going to have to get probably, I think the CPAP machine is struggling to give me the kind of sleep that I need. My sleep doctor warned me about this. I need to lose weight. Otherwise, they're going to have to give me a like basically a stronger version, like a more powerful version of a CPAP machine that's called a BiPAP machine.
Okay.
Anyway, and I think that's what it is, but I am in denial, and I'm working out and I'm eating good. I've worked out like 3 times this week already, and it's only Wednesday. Like, I feel good about myself, and yet it's still not enough. So every night I go to sleep, and I sleep like the whatever 8 hours ish, 7 hours, something like that, and I'm just like The Walking Dead.
I'm so sorry. It's
a bummer. So I'm hoping I can get my ass in gear. But no, I'm drinking like ridiculous amounts. I think I drank like 5 or 6 cups of coffee today. Isn't that insane?
Yeah, and then it becomes a cycle because your body's having to filter all that coffee out of you.
I know. I'm like peeing constantly. I'm having to drink tons of water because I'm worried about getting dehydrated. So anywho, it's just a lot of fun. But hey, I am so looking forward to 3-day weekend, 4th of July. Do you get a 3-day weekend?
I actually get a 4-day weekend.
Hell yeah. Good for you.
I get Friday and Monday off.
Oh yeah.
Are you taking Friday off or Monday off?
I'm just taking Monday off. Yeah, taking Monday off. What else? I'm trying to think if there's anything else for my mental health check-in. I'll see if anything more comes to me. I'll let you know. What is your mental health check-in?
What is it? That's a really good question.
Love as a man, I feel weird saying this. I feel like I'm not supposed to comment on any woman's appearance. But you look great. I'm loving your hair, your makeup.
Thank you.
Everything is wonderful. Is it okay that I said that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're allowed to tell your friend, as long as you're not like nice titties. You're allowed to comment.
I do go around saying that all the time. To Mason Pitlock.
Yeah. But we just got back. I went to DC area with Sanjay this past weekend, and we flew overnight both ways, and that was tiring.
Whoa.
But I feel recovered, to be honest. And then we're flying again. We should have just stayed. We realized later it would have been cheaper to just stay in a hotel and minimize the flight. But we are flying to Chicago. this weekend
Oh,
to
fun.
see my mom and my brother. My brother for the first time since December of 2019. So
Whoa.
that'll be fun.
Super cool. What are they doing in Chicago?
I can't remember if I talked about this on the podcast,
I
but
don't think
we
so.
just originally the plan was to go to Atlanta to visit my mom. And then she was like, "Why do you want to come here?" And then I was like, "Well, why don't we go a few hours out of Atlanta so we can like anyway." And then she and my brother were like, "We can go anywhere in the world." And then they both started talking about options, and I was like, "Narrow the options." And they wouldn't narrow the options, but I felt like I had heard the term Denver the most often. So I just go ahead and book us an Airbnb in Denver. But something tells me to get the redeemable booking.
Yeah.
And so I call them to tell them like I got the Airbnb in Denver, and they both go, "I can't wait to go to Denver or Chicago."
What?
And I was just like, "Okay, so you had a preference all along, and it's the same preference." And Sanjay and I had absolutely no preference.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just went ahead and canceled, got my money back immediately. And found a way better deal in Chicago. So that
Oh,
part's
nice. Well, that's fun. What any big plans of what y'all are gonna do there?
not really. We're staying in Wicker Park, and
Oh, cool.
we're planning. I haven't actually made them yet. We're planning to make anchor plans the days that we'll be there. Like
Anchor
what? Like
plan.
go see like we really want to see this museum, and
Art
so
Institute.
I think we'll go to the Art
Yeah.
Institute,
Art
and
Institute.
then
Yeah. It's
we want
fantastic.
Sanjay and I want to see an improv show, but Second City shows are currently $70 a seat.
Are they really?
I assume because of
Holy
the
shit.
limited seating for the pandemic, but we were
Jesus.
like, okay, well, if that's the worst show, that's like the Thursday night, midnight, or whatever. It was crazy. And so we were like, this is probably people we are
I was
better
thinking. I was thinking about. I was thinking to myself, is that what it says on the website? This is the worst show we offer, and it's $70.
No, I mean they're probably all good, but like the idea that the late night show that at a normal theater would be like,
that's
this is our
crazy.
throwaway was $70, and then yeah, it went up from there.
That's crazy.
But yeah, we might try and see. I have some friends who do improv in Chicago. I'm sure
Great.
you do too. So we're gonna find out if there's anything else.
Awesome.
That we can see.
That's cool.
And then restaurants. I'm a big food traveler.
Ooh, yes.
That's really what I'm going to find out about.
Totally.
Food.
You like it a deep dish pizza?
I've only had a deep dish pizza at Gino's in Austin. I'll admit I'm a little bit lactose intolerant. I have IBS, so a deep dish pizza can fuck me up a little bit. But you know what I am excited about? I said we're staying in Wicker Park. We're actually staying in a neighborhood directly beside it. You've lived there, Ukrainian Village, and I've heard that there's great Eastern European food in Chicago. And when I was growing up, my best friend was Bosnian. And there were a lot of Bosnian kids at my school, so I was eating Bosnian food regularly growing up. And then when I went to college, I missed it so much. So I am hoping to get some good, like Eastern European, some burek, burek, burek.
Oh yeah,
in there. It's a
awesome
pastry. I feel like I've said this on this podcast before, so I am very sorry if that's
true.
No.
Hey, everything. I took a migraine pill. Everything is sounding fresh and new right now. I could totally see where deep dish pizza deep dish pizza is very polarizing, but the lactose intolerant kind of seals the deal that maybe you could skip that. I was also going to say cheese curds are a big deal up there that you don't really get that, and you don't get those everywhere, but you might want to steer clear of those too.
You could get that as an appetizer to share. Like, it's all moderation, you know?
Oh yeah.
The real reason I'm scared is last week we finished Schitt's Creek. I had watched the first 5 seasons, but not the 6th. And so I rewatched it in full with Sanjay and we finished it together.
Cool.
So for the last night, we decided, since we'd been watching the show for 6 months, we did the same thing with Third Rock from the Sun. We would do like a little celebration, and Sanjay really wanted to do a cheese plate, even though he's really the lactose intolerant.
Oh,
we did And then my stomach was fucked up for days. And I'm sure
Oh
part of it
no.
is like when you make a cheese plate for yourself, you have way more cheese than you would have in a restaurant. Like you just buy 3 blocks of cheese rather than the
Yeah,
like dollop they you pay too much for at a restaurant.
totally.
But yeah, I really had to work. I had to work to regulate. And then we
Ooh.
traveled. So I finally got it normal. And then we traveled. And then yesterday I took a laxative. That's what I want our
Bam.
listeners to know. It was Miralax, which is a very gentle one. It doesn't make you have diarrhea. But today I did poop 4 times. That's how
Whoa.
many days of poop were saved up in my body. I don't know.
Damn.
You were listening to this because you were hoping for sexy talk. You're gone now. Get out of town. Bruce says 4 times. Wow.
Real women poop. Get over it. Patriarchy.
Yep.
Damn. No, I have a very my stomach tends to get fucked up. Chloe's stomach tends to get fucked up. It's so I'm so sorry. Comedian who shall not be named. Initials are LCK. That makes it real hard to know. Yeah, no.
Go on.
But I've never related to a bit more than when he said that his doctor once asked him, how are your bowel movements? Tell me, what do you eat in a given day and your bowel movements? And he's like, it's a blur. It's just a blur of eating and shitting. There's no rhyme or reason to. I'm like, yeah, I can never answer that question when I'm at the doctor and they ask a question like that. I'm just like, yeah, it's a blur.
It does. There are so many Louis bits that became cultural touchstones because you're like, this is just the easy way to refer to this. Oh shit, I have to plug the computer on in a second. But I think that's the same bit where he's like, I've never had to go use the bathroom and it wasn't an emergency.
Yeah. The meal's not over until I hate myself. Every trip to the restroom is an emergency. That's the same bit. But no, well, that'll be fun. And Wicker, the Chicago trip, Wicker Park is a super cool area. You'll have a blast there. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a coworker who lives in Wicker Park, so I gave her the address we were staying at, and she was like, "Here are my favorite restaurants and bars within walking distance."
Oh, perfect.
So that girl really showed up for me.
Awesome. So many great, so many great. I mean, you could like throw a rock and hit a great Italian place, pizza place. I mean, I remember there was just like this neighborhood generic pizza place around the corner from us that was incredible. And it probably like wasn't even on most people's radar because there were, tons of places like that. But no, that's great. Enjoy that. Trying to think if there's anything else really. Oh, can I tell? Do you ever try to watch Twin Peaks? You ever get into
I've
that?
watched the first episode of Twin Peaks. Can I tell you just a brief comedic story about Twin Peaks and
Absolutely.
why I haven't maybe finished it?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so one time my mom made a joke that I was conceived during an episode of Golden Girls, which would explain my personality.
What?
And so I followed up later on and I was like, do you remember telling me this? And she goes, no, but your brother was conceived during an episode of Twin Peaks.
Holy shit.
And I was like, okay, that explains both of us.
Wow.
But anyway, what a creepy thing to say. And then someone, when I told them that, asked me, they were like, season 1 or season 2? Because that makes a big difference. And I know it does like transition into more sci-fi elements in season 2. Is that accurate?
Just season 2 just becomes batshit insane and not in a good way. It's just silly. It devolves into like silly slapsticky dumb foolery.
Yes.
But season 1 is incredible. Season 1 is like a masterpiece. It's like you're watching it and it feels like you're watching like some sort of multi-level chess. It's like, oh my God, this is such geniusness. And then season 2 is just like, it feels like you're watching the Three Stooges at times. It's like, how is this the same show? And then what I'm watching, so I've seen all those. I've seen seasons 1 and 2, but they came out with a final 18 episodes on Showtime a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that we are for the second time, we're trying to watch it. We gave up midway through last time. We couldn't handle it. It's the weirdest. It is the weirdest fucking shit I have ever seen in my life. And I've seen some David Lynch stuff. This makes no fucking sense. We get fucked up. We get high.
Yeah,
and we just start laughing our asses off. We're like, what the fuck is everyone like? Almost like you're watching a bad movie, but then there will be these random moments of just like, holy shit, this is kind of incredible. And I say all this just to kind of get to, I don't know if you've heard of episode 8, but everyone talks episode 8 of the Showtime episodes that they made. People say, it was hyped up to me. This is like what the whole show is like, builds up to. That episode 8 is legit awesome. I got really fucked up last night.
Okay.
Stayed up late and watched it, and it delivered the goods. So
nice.
That plays into my headspace.
I'm glad it wasn't overhyped to you.
No, it felt just right. It was like, holy shit, this is pretty amazing. Anyway, but yeah,
I definitely have had to moderate. Okay, so first of all, I think I mentioned I have to stop smoking weed during the Marvel shows. We are not caught up on Loki, but I'm gonna watch it all sober because I get so confused. But I've also been watching this show Sexify on Netflix. I don't know if everyone's being prompted to watch it over and over again. It's a Polish show that has had crossover success. And it's pretty good, but I cannot for the life of me read subtitles and pay attention to what's happening on screen if I'm high. I'm like, I like this show too much to half watch it. I'm going to pick something else random.
Totally.
To put on the screen. But yeah, last night Sanjay had a night shoot, so we were apart after having to spend like not having to spend. I really genuinely enjoy spending time with him, and I feel lucky. But I had last night alone, so I just ate vegan food and watched girly shows and smoked weed. That was good.
Boom, nice. No, when Chloe and I have those moments, like Chloe right now. I hate to break it to everyone, but you're not going to hear Chloe's laugh in the background tonight. She's at a friend's house watching one of those Real Housewives shows. So when I saw
that there's a new season starting today, right?
Yeah, and
they released the taglines on the internet.
I forget which one it is, but she has the ones. Yeah, she loves Real House. She's been watching a lot of 90 Day Fiancé, and it's so funny that like I used to kind of make fun of all that, and then I weirdly start getting mesmerized by 90 Day Fiancé. Have you ever watched it? I find myself weirdly getting a little invested.
I support you watching it. Many know Nicole Byer, probably my favorite comedian, has an entire podcast about 90 Day Fiancé. Oh, really? And I've tried to watch it just so I could add another one of her podcasts to my rotation. It is okay. First of all, there's like more legal talk than you think there's going to be going in. And then also it is kind of about legal trafficking. Anyway,
it is insane. It is. It's so. I mean, maybe that's what mesmerizes me about it is I'm watching it, and you are kind of watching like a train wreck play out in slow motion, like every episode. And it's like, here's what's happening in this train wreck. Let's cut to the other train wreck, and it's just like, why are these people doing this? Like. And that's part of what sucks you in. I mean, clearly they know what they're doing. It is just like morbid curiosity. But I find myself, it's the only one of these like reality shows where I actually find myself turning to Chloe like, okay, now who is that again? Okay.
Yeah.
I actually stop and kind of watch it for a minute. I'm like,
we all have one or two we get sucked into. We have not continued it, but we started the second season of Too Hot to Handle, which is that show where they like have a cash prize that they can only win if they don't fuck each other. And
Okay.
okay, first of all, it was really funny. I was like, how are they even going to do this? What do the contracts look like? Because everybody's seen the first season of Too Hot to Handle. They reveal it to them what show they're on, and they all go, "We're on Too Hot to Handle," which was like a very fun moment of like connecting with them. Like, yeah, you watched the first season like I did. But then, okay, everyone's fucking nuts except for one guy is literally so hot that he doesn't have to have any personality flaws. You know what I mean? Like, that's why they cast him. And that means he's also the sanest person on the show. And it's just like, the fact that you put an actual catch on this show is the most dramatic thing you could have done. Because okay, first of all, it's like he's this super ripped black guy who has a French accent. He's probably 6'3". Sanjay saw him and goes, I mean, I'm straight, but we can ignore that man is hotter than any of the women on that show, right? And I was like, yeah, yeah, he is.
Wow.
Anyway, I don't know why I'm telling this, but like occasionally one really catches you. You're just like, okay, what's gonna happen to this guy?
Yeah, totally.
I clicked like I turned it off, and then I went into the bedroom because we separated, and I was like scrolling through Netflix in the bedroom. And in the bedroom, the key art, the little frame of the Too Hot to Handle was just this guy's face. And I was like, that's good marketing. That's what I would have chosen.
Nice. Anyway. That's yes. Yes.
Okay. Why did I ramble about that for so
long?
No,
I love it. No, well that's if Chloe has like the TV to herself, she'll watch shows like that. And then when I get the TV, I'm like, what do I? Yeah, this is one of those weird things. So I was at home by myself on Friday. Chloe is in Fuck This Week now, so she's gone. So I just was at home. I was like so lost. I was like, what is life? What do I do? I just watched like Natural Born Killers and ate a pizza. I just reverted to like 15-year-old Lane, basically.
I think that's okay. Like allowing yourself to just be your rawest self.
It's weird.
That was repetitive.
Yeah.
I definitely I watch more movies when I'm alone than when I'm with Sanjay, because that's things that I'm like, I have a couple hours to myself. That was when I watched Jennifer's Body.
I've heard I need to watch that.
It's good. You just have to go in not kind of knowing you're watching like a distinctly feminist film.
Yeah.
Even though it was marketed to teen boys was the decision of the studio, which is, if you watch the movie, you'll be like, wow. Like, whoa. Anyway, I've heard it too far in.
I've heard it's like a cult classic. I have several people I have like several female clients who say it's their favorite movie or one of their favorite movies.
Yes, it was good.
I want to watch.
I actually had a viral TikTok about the movie Jennifer's Body.
What?
But about the way it was mismarketed. You're right. It is a cult classic, and when you're on TikTok, it just finds other people like you. But that and But I'm a Cheerleader were the two sapphic cult classics that I watched for the first time recently, and I like them both. I recommend them both.
Nice. I'm sorry, it was Jennifer's Body, and what was the other one?
But I'm a Cheerleader.
But I need to watch that.
It's Natasha Lyonne, and it's from the 90s, and it's about a gay conversion camp.
Yes.
And when I saw it as a kid, I don't know why. Growing up in religious Georgia, it was always in the Blockbuster, but no one talked about it. And when I watch it, it's exactly in the vein of all the. It is camp, but like in that really like.
Yeah.
I put it in the bucket with, Death Becomes Her and Troop Beverly Hills of like, yes, this is like very well done. I like it.
Yeah. Awesome. No, I remember when I was in college, not to brag, but I took a class called Feminist Film Theory.
Oh.
And don't worry, I interrupted everyone. I held court. I was like, ladies, please, please. No. It was very. It's so funny. 20-year-old Lane was very much like kind of taking a lot in during that class. But I will say that is probably the course I think back on the most.
Yeah.
And I think it planted some seeds that 20-year-old Lane didn't fully understand at the time. And they're paying off now. Like I'll hear things now and I'm like, oh shit, this is exactly what I was coming up. At this point, 20 years ago. Anyway, but I'm a cheerleader used to come up a lot in that course. And clearly I need to see, this was the first time, like that class is where I first heard about like Paris is Burning. We watched that in that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask course, what you watched.
Yeah, it was Paris is Burning. There was some 1950s melodramas we watched. Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I know there were a bunch of others, but those are the ones that. So Paris is Burning clearly was like a standout. I mean, that's incredible. And 20 years ago, hardly anyone was talking about that movie. Now you can watch it on Netflix.
The idea of femininity in Paris is Burning is, it's like not through the cis female lens at all. So that's already like pretty progressive for them to be showing in
totally
the 90s, early 2000s.
This you're talking about like when I was in the course.
Yeah.
This would have been right around like 2000, I think. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely watch But I'm a Cheerleader. It is 90 minutes, the length the comedy should be.
Yeah.
So
hell yeah.
In and out. Yeah. I think Jennifer's Body is also really good. Okay, but should we talk about our topic for the day? Sorry.
Let's do it.
Everybody knows the first 30 minutes, you just have to listen to us talk about ourselves and what TV we're watching. Because it's a pandemic and we're all, oh my God, Lane, I got the J&J vaccine and they're saying I'm going to have to get a booster for the Delta variant. So far, the CDC hasn't agreed with that, but like, scholars are saying it, and I'm like, well, I trust the scholars more than I trust the fucking political entity that disseminates the information.
Oh shit.
Anyway, I've been wearing a mask again for like a month. I had a little bit of freedom, and now I'm saying no. I'm not gonna spread that Delta variant. That's not me. That's not who I am. Okay.
Damn. Yeah. Should we be worried about that Delta variant? Like supposedly, everyone, or
if you had Pfizer or Moderna, it's like extremely unlikely that you'll get it. Also, currently the rates of it's 99.2% of people who are hospitalized with coronavirus are unvaccinated. So it's a little freaky that 0.08, but like 0.8%, but like obviously that means like, because that's not the percentage of the population that's vaccinated. Like it's been very effective. Wow. So anyway, yes.
Hey, maybe the booster will be a form of paying your dues.
Interesting that you say that, Lane, because did we even mention at the top of the app this is what we were going to be talking about?
I mentioned it super briefly.
Okay, good. I think we touched on this. The part of the reason, so we touched on it in the episode about feeling jaded. Because I was like, did we do this before? And then I looked through my notes and we talked about it some because the two do go hand in hand.
I think so, yeah.
But, I don't know.
Yeah.
How do we, if we have people who don't like participate actively in an arts community listening, how would you describe this, Lane? What are we going to be talking about?
I think this is one of those, this is a nice subjective topic, one that requires no research, which makes it fun. But it's, it's more of almost a philosophical debate. But I think it's the idea of when you start in any art form and any medium, You've got to make some sacrifices and do the work, and you can't expect to kind of go to the front of the line. There are no shortcuts to getting where you want to go, I think. And so I think paying your dues is kind of like, I think part of paying your dues is like honing your skills, trying and failing a bunch of times. But it also, I think paying dues, it's like, it also, that term paying dues, I think it also refers to like, I don't know, maybe like going through a certain kind of gauntlet, like that your community, like you're right. This is a hard one to put into words. I think it's like, well, I know like with comedy, with stand up, I think that one is real easy to wrap your head around for most people. Cause it's like paying your dues is night after night doing open mics, like a zillion open mics before you can ever get like a comedy special.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then I don't know, like I was Googling to see if there were any articles because I do want to talk about it a little bit. I think one of the things that's most subjective about like paying your dues is the level to which, because it's all about how you rise up in something, right? And so like it's an easy way to like put down any marginalized group is like you're saying that it's because of discrimination, but actually it's just that you need to pay your dues, and if you just paid your dues you'd have that. But yeah, I started trying to Google to see if I could find any articles I could read in the brief span of time I had before this, and then I go back to work. But so what I'm saying is I'm walking in ignorant except for my own experience and trying to extrapolate that others' experience might be harder than mine, and I already level, so that must mean blah blah blah. But anyway, blah, blah, blah is exactly how I like to explain the experience of marginalized communities. The definition came up first thing of paying dues as according to dictionary.com, which is earning something through hard work, long experience, or suffering.
Ooh, yeah. Earning is a great word, and suffering. Those are key words, I think, to that. What paying dues means.
Yeah. And someone in the chat just said, it's not about skill, right? It's about credentials. And I think in a way that's true of like in stand-up, people want to see you go to open mics every night because that means that they can see your evolution. And you are paying those dues in that it means that you're evolving.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who evolves really quickly, you still might not have paid your dues, and vice versa. You can pay your dues and still suck.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. You can pay your dues. Yeah, you can pay your dues and still be mediocre. And I think this is every local stand-up scene has that dude that's super jaded and thinks no one has paid their dues.
Yeah.
But jaded straight white man who hangs back and just shits on everyone because they never made it. I'm not thinking of a specific person. No. I'm actually not thinking of Austin when I say that. I'm thinking of other places I've lived. But Austin probably, I just maybe don't know. I don't know much about the stand-up scene here. I'm sure there's maybe something like that. But the person who like didn't quite get their shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They paid their dues. They had a certain amount of talent, but they never quite rose beyond a certain level. And I think that's a recipe to feel jaded.
For sure.
Right?
For sure. It's easy. I mean, that's a hard part of any art form. You know what we've never talked about on this show is working super hard at an art form forever and then learning you don't have any exceptional talent at it. I don't think anybody wants to think about it or talk about it, but it is something that happens to like 99% of people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who do this. Where was I going with this? Wow.
I actually
good.
There's a documentary that pops into my head It was a documentary. When I think of paying dues, there was a documentary that came out maybe 10 years ago, maybe even more than that, maybe more like 15 years ago, on the Boston comedy scene of
Mhm.
the like 70s and 80s. A
Yeah.
very niche documentary, but there are a lot of documentaries kind of like that.
Yeah.
Kind of they're not, they were kind of minor but this documentary, it focused on the rise of the Boston comedy scene at this very specific time when a lot of stand-ups were getting it was kind of the rise of HBO and the
Uh-huh.
rise of HBO comedy specials, and then also comics getting sitcom deals.
Mm.
So there was different waves of like kind of stand-up trends, and there was this apparently a really strong Boston comedy scene that had a lot of people who had been really trying to get a big break for years, and of all people, the first person to break through was Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh, interesting.
And people were very pissed off in the Boston comedy scene because they felt he had not paid his dues, that he had
Interesting.
skipped the line because he was part of a slightly younger ilk that had
Mhm.
only been really doing comedy, I guess, a couple of years, and there are other people that had been there longer, namely Stephen Wright.
Oh.
So Stephen Wright was of the slightly older guard who was pissed at Bobcat Goldthwait. Now it's kind of funny, these we're so far removed from that time. I wonder if people are listening and they've never heard of either of these people, but I just thought that was interesting that Bobcat Goldthwait, he broke through because he was doing something no one else was doing. He had this very weird, odd shtick,
Yeah.
and even though he was blowing up, his colleagues and his peers in Boston were like, "Who's this fucking kid with the funny voice
Yeah.
cutting in line?"
No, that's so true. Well, and I think it's interesting because like youth is a commodity in entertainment too. And I don't know, I was
Yeah.
watching Shrill today and I realized like 80 Bryant's basically my age. But
Hmm.
she's been on SNL for 8 years. She started when she was 25, which
Wow.
means like she can't have been at Second City for that long before they picked her up. I mean, obviously she's incredibly talented. That's an incredibly long tenure to be on SNL. She leads her own show, but like, oh yeah, they were really like, fuck everybody doing this for 10 years. Here's this youth
Right.
who is doing it but I don't know. I mean, that's always going to be the case on a show like that too.
Totally. And I think this in a way harkens back to something that was a topic in our first episodes, but it was kind of me catching myself when I was in my early to mid 20s. I kind of caught myself going down this path of being jaded and like
Yeah.
shitting on people who were getting opportunities that I wanted. And it was just, I just kind of flipped the way I was looking at it and was like, I want to be supportive of people who get what they're after, as
Yeah.
opposed to just like petty jealousy. And I think that is where it can get a little tricky, is like with acting. I feel like for every person that gets plucked out of complete obscurity, like there's a story that
Chris Pratt
like
got discovered in a Bubba Gump shrimp company.
really, is that what it was? I
Well,
didn't
I
know
don't know
that.
if that was what you were going to say.
No,
That's
I
one of the
wasn't going to
ones I
say
hear the most.
that.
It's
That's
true.
a good example. No, that's perfect. I was going to say, I think it was like Rosario Dawson
Mm,
was a teenager vacationing in New York,
mm.
and like a casting director just spotted her on the street and said, like, be like, come into this audition. And she basically was on vacation and then just never left. It was like she had to send her parents back home to go and bring her clothes, because it was just like, it was just one thing after another just started happening. And it's like for every story like that, there are like 10,000 people who will go on. Like, I know people in LA who had an agent
Mm-hmm.
went on 20 auditions a week for 2 years
Yeah.
and didn't book anything.
Television and film acting does seem to be the biggest fluke in the world, which is such a bummer because so many people work so hard at it and are so good at it. And then it's like, oh, you made like an album for teenagers, you get a TV show. Oh, you had a successful stand-up special but have never acted before, you get a TV show. Like all this stuff, it must be just heartbreak after heartbreak. Or like, oh, you're super hot but have literally never, people who like did theater starting at age 11 and then like see
Right.
like the child of a famous person, especially.
Right. No, and the thing that I feel like this is a meme that went around, but it's like for every like that theater programs at any high school in America would be full of like young women honing their craft, working their ass off, memorizing lines, learning tap, learning dance.
Yeah.
And then there'd be like, well, we need a man to play Hamlet. So, hey, that football player in the hallway,
yep.
you look the part. Come here, you get to have the lead role.
That was like, no, one of my good friends in high school she's a professional ballerina, but she started performing with the Atlanta Ballet Company when she was young. And she had started taking ballet classes at like age 5 and had been through like a winnowing process over and over and over again until she's like because they have 2 different leads in the Nutcracker because there's like a kid. Anyway, okay. She was like, whatever. I don't remember the plot of the Nutcracker.
But I was on like so much acid kid. When I saw the Nutcracker. I don't know.
And then she said that like they just like no boys ever did it and then realized, and probably it was like boys did it as they were able, because she said like 16-year-old gay boys would just show up and then the next year they would be a principal. And it's like, okay, yeah, you probably had to struggle against like toxic masculinity your whole life to finally get up the guts to ask to do ballet. Yeah. But that must still be maddening that you're like, I've had an eating disorder for 15 years and you showed up last week to play across from me. Oh no, I don't think so, honey.
Okay, this is where I've got to say I have always kind of mythologized, romanticized, whatever you want to call it, stand up.
Yeah.
Because as an outsider looking in, it just seems so evident to me that, and I'm not saying, I'm sure there are people that paid their dues, deserve breaks that they didn't get, but I'm just saying that there's no shortcuts. You can't pluck someone from obscurity and see them like, ooh, you have the right look of a stand-up. So we're going to put you up. You're going to do an hour of material at the Paramount tomorrow. It's like, no, that you, to get to the point where you have an hour of material and can do it in front of like an A-list room, like the Paramount or something. It's like, they're just, I got to think there's no way a person like that didn't pay their dues in some way.
Yeah, there's no way a not already famous person. I can tell you like Donald Glover and Alana Glazer, neither of them were ready when they did their specials. Like both of those are like, those people are so talented. Nobody should have let them do an hour of stand-up. Nobody should have let them. It's not representative of their talent. It's very bad. It's a very specific skill you have to hone over many years. Damon Wayans Jr. is evidently recording a special. And I'm like, I love that guy. Therefore, I will not watch that special. Wow. There's no way he's been. Although someone actually did tell me that he was at a mic after them and he was great. But anyway. Anyway, all I'm saying is, yeah, but I think you're right that with somebody who doesn't already have fame.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I would say, wouldn't you say though that you could watch that and it's evident that they weren't ready. You know what I mean? Like you can't fake the readiness.
I think stand-ups can tell they weren't ready.
Okay.
Regular people just think, I mean, at Alana Glazer's special, 100%. Absolutely, people said women aren't funny, and it's like, no, why did they let her do that? Like, we all worked so hard, and she does do stand up, and she's like decent for where she's at, which is like,
yeah.
but like it's just hack premise after premise about like Donald Trump and women and all this stuff. Anyway,
Oh,
anyway, this
well,
isn't to
that's
shit
yeah,
on her. Obviously, I'm saying I'm a big fan. She has a new movie coming out on Hulu that looks very good.
yeah.
But that whole ilk that can be
I see.
frustrating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, or like, yeah, I guess this is an aspect I wasn't considering. Like the person who was maybe on a sitcom has some name recognition, but doesn't
Yeah,
really have an hour of material, but they can like headline a Velveeta room or a Cap
yeah.
City type venue anywhere in the country, and maybe
Even
they didn't quite pay their stand up dues to
yeah,
get that gig.
there is a Joe Jonas stand up set on Roku TV that you can
What?
go watch.
Crazy.
Anyway, none of this is important because like all these are exceptional cases. Why am I
Yeah.
throwing this out there? I don't know. I'm exemplifying how judgmental people can be when you don't pay your dues. Oh, okay. Wait. All
Okay.
right. Can
Yeah.
I just talk
Yeah.
about there's a specific dichotomy I wanted to talk about in this conversation that we're having. And I'm sorry that a lot of it, I don't know. I don't want to talk about identity politics too much, but I do think it necessarily plays a big role here. I feel like in comedy, I've seen two types of people. Not two types of people. There are many types of people, but I see dues paying go wrong in two different ways. One, people who do not understand the concept at all and thus feel very frustrated about why they aren't accelerating faster. And that can be really unhealthy. I think I won't lie, I've 80% of the time this is a 23-year-old straight white boy who's like I'm better than everyone else. I don't understand why I'm not special.
Yes.
I should not just be I should be allowed to do stand-up sketch and improv and design the poster of my own show and everybody should think it's the best one. And if you don't, like I think I'm actually oppressed. I see that a lot and I think a lot of that is just like seeing yourself represented everywhere. And then the other side of that coin is people often women taking on a lot of dues in order to prove themselves and saying to them like I don't need the money, I'm paying dues. I don't need the recognition, I'm paying dues. And part of that is because you're being told like I can't speak to any experience but my own, but I'm sure part of that is being told like, oh, actually you're not getting booked just because you haven't worked hard enough. And so you're like, that's fine, I'll work hardest. People always quote that Steve Martin quote that's be undeniable. He's like, oh, you want to get booked, be undeniable or whatever. And it's like,
I
okay,
believe it's be so good they can't ignore you.
okay.
Right?
I guess so. He must have said be undeniable at some point because
Okay, maybe it is undeniable.
But I'm sure he said that too. I don't know when he said undeniable or if that's a misattributed quote, but that's been repeated back to me a lot. And it's just like people say it like it's objective. And it's like, okay, well, there's rooms in Idaho and rooms in Atlanta, and I can guarantee you those are going to, an undeniable person in one room isn't going to be undeniable in the other. And I think that can be used to really put down any perspective that's considered other in art generally.
Yeah.
Like, I think I told you like one of the most offensive things someone ever said to me without realizing was like, it's so brave of you to make jokes just for women. And it's just like, so brave of you to talk about jerking off your dick. I don't relate to that. Fuck you. Anyway, where was I going with this? Anyway, I think that's the duality of it. I think that dues paying can be a really healthy thing to talk about when you're talking to someone who maybe feels small because they felt entitled and you're trying to help them understand it. But it can become a way to put people down.
Yeah.
In a way as well. So I don't know. That was
totally
just my two thoughts I brought into this.
I think you're right. Yeah. No, I think that kind of logic or those kinds of messages in the wrong hands could be very invalidating,
Yeah.
and used to silence and marginalize different voices. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted you to just be, there was a moment where you're like, oh yeah, what was the point of all this? Oh yeah, I hate Steve Martin. I would have loved it if that's what you were building towards. No. Yeah, no, no, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh shit, I had something and then I lost it. Bobcat Goldthwait. That's all I have. No. What do you think about? Oh, you know what? That quote sometimes pops into my head as a compliment, never as an excuse to put someone down. But sometimes I'm watching someone that I've never seen before, and I'm just so awestruck by their talent. That Steve Martin quote does pop into my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, damn, that person really like yeah, Stephanie Vasquez Fonseca. I saw her in Fuck This Week a few weeks ago, and she was just like, she was on fire and was doing things, and I couldn't stop gushing to her afterwards, and like saying, not exactly saying the Steve Martin quote, but kind of the essence of that. Like, she just fucking destroyed out there, and it was so fun to watch. But shit, what was I? Oh, it was watching the Bo Burnham special. Because, like I've said, I went into watching Inside not wanting to like him, kind of not thinking that I didn't like him, even though I was wrong about that. And then about 5 minutes in, I think it was during the second song of the show, that some version of that Steve Martin line kind of went through my head of like, fuck, he is so good. I can't deny. I want part of me wanted to, but it was like, oh, I'm willing to admit when someone is just that fucking good.
Well, it's so funny because I do think social media has provided an outlet for people who don't get to the second half of that thought to just say stuff like if you're like, I didn't want to like it, you can just get online. I think I told you, like, it's sorry to listeners who don't give a shit about the Bo Burnham special that we've used it as a touch point for a full month now. But like, I think
why would someone listen to this show and not like that? You know what I mean? I think it's
it is really at the intersection of what we do. It is 100% about the mission of this show. But yeah, I think I told you somebody like tagged me in this weird rant about like, yeah, it was great, but should we be paying attention to a guy like this? And it's like, well, the whole special asked that question. So like, you're really just looking for a reason not to like him. And I have no interest in that. I don't know. I am like, my favorite podcast is Las Culturistas, which is Bo and Yang, and his best friend Matt Rogers, who is also like a gay performer who's on a lot of different shows. And today they were talking about the tweets they get from other members of the gay community who are like, "You're setting us back," and it's like, shit. You just didn't like it, or thought like you didn't get to the part where it's like, I don't dislike this because they remind me of me. You know what I mean? It's like, I think a lot of the time when you're like, I feel like I should have been able to make that and I wasn't, so I'm going to look for the notes. Yeah. There's a lot of like people's reaction to the Bo Burnham special. That's sort of what I heard when I was hearing them talk about what was in tweets.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I had this thought. I'm so sorry. This is me being jaded about people who are jaded. So it's like me being a meta grouch. But it's I was thinking like the one of the criticisms that I hear of the Bo Burnham special, it's like if you were to apply that to music, it would be like saying, oh man, the Beatles only were good because they had money in a recording studio. If I'd had money in a recording studio, I'm sure I could have done all that. You know, it's like, okay, what have you done with, like, you now have the ability to, anyway.
No, that's so well, that happens to me a lot. Okay, so it's always happened. Every stand-up, male or female, anybody gets that with anytime you say it is, or well, anytime you say it to a certain kind of person, a dad, they're like, I could do that. Oh yeah, that's great. How did you get into that? I could do that. And then now that I'm in advertising, wow. First of all, every comedian thinks they could be in advertising, which to be fair, a lot of the skills are similar, but I worked in marketing for like 6 years and then went to portfolio school to learn strategy in order to be able to do what I do. And then whenever a comedian's like, have you thought of this tagline for that? I'm like, yeah, actually it was first round and we tossed it out. Like, yeah, that was the first thought line for that. Congratulations, you thought of the first thought line.
Yes.
Anyway, it is.
That's great.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure like improv, any of this. Actually, I think people are more likely to think they can't do improv when they can. It's like the one art form I feel that way
Yeah,
about.
for sure, for sure. Oh, this popped into my head about paying dues. Maybe like one of these exceptional stories that kind of, it's not the norm, but
Yeah.
in kind of the mythology around Chris Farley, he'd been doing improv like such a short time. Like he was only in classes. He had never done a show. And he just grabbed Del Close like after a show and was like, he'd only been in classes for like 3 weeks. And he kept hounding Del Close. You got to put me in a show. You got to put me in a show. And Del was like, no, we've never done that. Absolutely not. And that they said that Chris Farley was such a forceful presence after about two or three more weeks of that, just like they were like, fine, fuck it. We'll put you in a show just so you can fall on your face and learn that's not how it works. And they put him in a show and he was actually good. And they were like, fuck it. That backfired.
This is interesting. One of the arguments I've had drunk that I'm like, I still am like, was I right or not? Okay. Back in the day, sorry, this is like Austin improv down the rabbit hole. Got to know something about history and politics of Austin improv. But back in the day when Fallout Theater in Austin was still the new movement, and the new movement, of course, had this really problematic narcissistic leadership that was very hands off and then just played favorites to figure out who was going to do what. There was no process for submitting your own show. You just had to seek out the narcissistic man who lived in New Orleans and ask him to have a show. And basically, there were no shows hosted. There were like 1 or 2 shows hosted by people of color. There weren't any like it was like very, very not diverse. Yeah. And I was like trying to lead this movement to create a submission because I felt that would make it more inclusive. Basically, because your level of entitlement determines if you feel a level 1 white male improviser can be like, I want a show, whereas like any marginalized group is taught to pay your dues. And I was like, this necessarily means you're just going to get arrogant people getting shows, and it's not a meritocracy at all. And then someone told me, they were like, I actually think you're being really belittling right now because, like, do you not think other people are capable of asking for shows? And it was one of those things where I was like, well, I do think they're capable. I do think, well, and like, I don't know, like women is included in this. I don't think it's like obviously as a straight white woman, I have a lot of privilege, but it's like, no, I don't think we feel as anyway. I still don't know whether I was wrong or right. Sorry, David Howe, about storming out of Cheer Up Charlie's during that argument. I don't think he'd mind me saying that. He wasn't being irrational. He might have won that argument. I still can't figure it out. Anyway, where am I going with this?
You hate Steve Martin.
I should.
And David Howe.
No, I love David. I still don't know if he was wrong or not. It was being very reasonable. I probably shouldn't have said that.
No, I mean, you raised a great point that I think history has shown that you were right. Don't you think history showed that you were trying to lead the way in the
Oh,
right
well, we
direction?
don't need to. I mean, would I like some people to say that? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Do I need it? No.
Am I a
um,
hero? Maybe.
I just disappeared at some point, so that's fine. But where was
Uh,
this?
but
I
no,
don't.
I think yeah. That this is. I guess maybe this is one of the things we're arriving at with this conversation. Maybe this is part of the fun of having a topic like this, and we're not really sure where a conversation like this is going to go. But don't you think on some? It's like the whole thing is kind of bullshit. Like paying dues is so subjective.
Yeah.
The concept of paying dues in the right hands can be a beautiful, wonderful thing. And in the wrong hands, the concept of paying dues can be a very toxic tool of like manipulation and
Yeah.
silencing. And it's just it's so, and I think this is why in probably every artistic bubble community of every medium and every bubble in the world, there probably is fucking like there's politics. There's fucking politics to everything. Right?
Absolutely. Well, it's like, I don't know. I guess before I got into comedy, when I watched TV shows and they're like, I don't want to get political about it. And then they referred to something other than US governmental or like general governmental politics. I was like, what does that even mean? And then once you get into any art form that has like an unspoken power structure,
Yes, very murky. Yeah.
it's necessarily political. And all of the aspects that come into governmental politics.
Yeah.
All of the and like all of the both like the support but also the gaslighting, like all of this stuff comes into it in the same way. I don't know.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's in some ways it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, I don't know. Like there are those really talented people who pay a little bit of dues, and then that's it. They kind of like an A.D. Bryant or something. Yeah. At most, maybe she was doing improv if she started when she was 18. At most, well, 7 years, maybe that's not too bad. But then for everyone, for like, then there are probably a bunch of people who have been toiling away in Chicago doing comedy 6-7 nights a week. I remember seeing those people.
Yeah.
6-7 nights a week, and they're in their 40s, some of them in their 50s, and it's like, you've never heard of these people.
Yeah.
You'll never hear of these, but they're doing it, and and they have a certain kind of clout in the bubble, but they're never going to be like A.D. Bryant's level.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, so long as I think a lot of it too is like I think the number one goal of any artist should be like, well, first of all, do prioritize yourself and your mental health. But it's like the question, what makes me better? How do I get better faster? Because, okay, so like clearly for me, the most direct comparison I could make, I started open mics the same month as with Andrew Dismukes of SNL. And he only is on SNL now. Well, I mean, clearly I haven't done stand-up in a couple of years, but like he got better than me faster, even though we were at all the same open mics, right? I knew then he was better than me. That was always evident. But the other thing was, he would show up at a mic where I was still editing the stuff from last week and have a whole fresh 5 minutes that killed, which means he spent his weekend writing and revising a new set, whereas I was just still working on editing the week before. So there's stuff I'm not seeing that is happening that my ADD ass could never achieve. And it's like, there's some dues paying going on at home too. It's like, just because somebody got something faster doesn't mean they were working less hard. And I don't know, I think about a lot. How sometimes people whose comedy you don't give a shit about somehow impact you Whitney Cummings. Have I talked about this interview before? I probably have.
I
Whitney
don't think
Cummings
so.
on You Made It Weird. If you ever feel like you can revisit Pete Holmes before he became insufferable, Whitney Cummings. Who's Whitney Holmes? Was I saying Whitney Holmes the whole time?
Emma Stone.
Cummings. Whitney Cummings episode of You Made It Weird. Because first of all, Pete Holmes was like weirdly obsessed with the idea of alt comedy and like not loving club comedy. And Whitney Cummings is like this classic, like, I'll give you what you want. I'll come on the Joe Rogan podcast as much as you want. I'm for everyone.
Oh, okay.
And so he was kind of like coming at her with these questions that were almost kind of pointed like that. And she was like, I don't know you alt comics obsession with being weird. I show up for the people who paid to see me. We talk about comedy exclusively in these battle terms. I killed, I slayed, I bombed, etc. And that's because it's like brutal. You get up there and you ask people to give you direct feedback, and either they do or they don't. And when I started, what she said was she recorded every set, went home, transcribed it, figured out like what sets got like had different tonality and which tonality got the bigger laugh, watched videos back, saw what she liked about her face, what she didn't like about her face. There have been a few times where I practiced certain jokes in front of the mirror because I think the physicality is important. But in general, I've never fucking done that. I've never sat with a video of myself and rewatched it to see where the jokes are. So I don't know. I guess part of this, what I mean to say is like the concept is a little bit imaginary insofar as there's so much you can't see. I don't know. Also, okay, wait, hold on. I'll let you speak first.
No, you're fine. Well, that was great, and yeah, that makes absolute sense. I'm thinking there was some comedy documentary that came out maybe around 10 years ago, and Carlos Mencia was in it, who at the time, I feel like it's funny now, Carlos Mencia, I mean, I feel like most people don't even remember who he was, but 10 years ago, he was someone that it was just like the comedy world's favorite punching bag. Everyone was making fun of him at the time. But I remember he came out in a comedy documentary saying, he's like, fuck alt comedy. If you ain't killing in Boise, you ain't shit. If you ain't killing in Kansas City, you ain't shit. Like, he was someone who was like, to be the best comedian means you should be able to play anywhere. And it sounds like maybe Whitney Cummings would kind of be in that. I don't hate club comics or sorry, the concept of club comedy versus alt comedy. I mean, I just love comedy. I don't know. I'm rewatching Seinfeld for the 100th time right now. I don't give a shit. I just like comedy.
Yeah. I mean, it can be helpful terms to talk about it under. I mean, I think I brought it up when we were talking about Austin shifting.
Exactly. But I'm just saying, I think that's shitty of Pete Holmes, I guess, to be dragging Whitney Cummings simply for being a club comic, if I understood, right?
Well, I do think she won the conversation. I came away like, wow, Pete looked like a fucking dick. And I think he came away feeling like that too. Well, okay. Here's the other thing that I've felt, and I don't know if other women feel this way, but for women in comedy, there is a level to which being sexually harassed by your peers is part of paying dues. Basically, when you start, every single person hits on you. In everybody who's like still doing it from when I started. Actually, you know what? Martin Urbano never hit on me. Very good man. Very successful man. But like aside from him, like I can't really think of anyone who didn't hit on me. My first boyfriend in comedy was much more successful than me and like had hit on me like over and over and over again for months. That's not to shit on him. He was actually he's still a good friend. But like that is normal and expected. And I watch it happen to young women. No, like I watch my male friends who I still love and like would have none of if I said no to this, do it to level 1 students at ColdTowne all the time. If you're an intern, I'm sorry. Literally, if you're listening to this and you are a level 1 student or intern at ColdTowne, I am so sorry for my friends and I don't stand behind their actions. Like, because as a woman, you have to get used to it or you'll be so lonely. And I think about that, like every guy who hit on me, it just took me a year of being around for them to desexualize me. Like, oh, she's gonna stick around and be my coworker, I have to respect her. But there's this whole like proving that you're gonna stick around and that you take it seriously before people stop thinking of you as a sex object.
Shit.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's like, I don't know, I view that as a part. I do think like another part of dues paying, figuring out how to react when the comic before you just told a rape joke. That's an essential part of dues paying as a woman. Jesus. Like, you're gonna be so angry you're shaking and you have to go on stage after that guy. Like, but at the same time, it's like, even as a woman, I want to book women who know how to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the first like several times it happens to you, you're fucked up. And then after that, especially if you're, as you gain the power, you're allowed to comment on it. Like, once I was hosting an open mic and someone said that, I would get on stage, rip them apart and kick them out, you know? But like, if you're also on it and the host chooses not to do that, it then falls to you to decide whether you want to do it. Anyway.
Wow. Where am I going with this? Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. Constant like moral dilemmas, constant kind of conflictedness. It's like, do I set boundaries, or maybe that's not the right word, but like, do I kind of speak my truth but at what cost? Like, what if I get ostracized? Like, these are the things that maybe, so someone like myself maybe, doesn't have to deal with, whereas women do.
I'm sure this isn't to say like my problems are special. I guess part of it is I keep thinking about it today because there was new Cosby news and like people were talking about people were talking about men in comedy on Twitter today. And some of the people making comments were people who, because there was a guy who like harassed me and my then boyfriend for like a full year and a half when I was living in Austin. And like, it was like he threatened me while I was walking on stage at his open mic that he hosted at the New Movement. I told the artistic director, he told me there was nothing he could do, like all this shit. And then 3 years later, he physically assaulted a female comedian with more clout than me. And that's not to say it isn't exactly as valid. This woman seems incredible and her experience is horrifying. And I'm so glad people acted on it then. Like, that's not to say it wasn't good that people listened to her. But I was like, I've been shouting this for years and everyone kept booking him except for one guy who has since assaulted a woman. And it's like, I should have been as successful as her if I wanted to bring this up. Like, what is this? Shit. Anyway, I don't know. Is this related to dues paying, or am I think it is making this about me? I don't know.
I think it is related in the sense that the dues paying, I think some people think of it as dues paying almost like it's an objective thing. Mm. And I think what you were saying just now, one, extremely powerful stuff that I'm going to want to talk with you maybe off the air, because this is also, I mean, I think this is stuff I'm not familiar with and I want to know more about. My God, it's shocking and awful. But what am I getting at? Oh, just that, clearly dues paying is intertwined with toxicity.
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't, it's hard to separate the two. And when the people in charge of what's good and what's not good and who gets booked and who doesn't get booked, et cetera, when those people are, I guess, yeah, straight white men, I guess, it's like it's like, what happens if you're not part of that club? Is your voice going to get heard? And are you going to get simply written off for, they didn't pay their dues, so why should we care or listen to that person, when what they're saying obviously is extremely valid?
Well, and I guess, why am I rambling? I'm rambling a lot.
No, not at all.
Well, because the person in question here who harassed me was not white, and at several points, like, he and I had really positive connections about, like, oh, that really, like, it's nobody, this is like something that happened down the road in my relationship with this person. Like, we had positive interactions before that, and that's like so often the case. But he was valued by the community as funnier than me. And I think that's something in dues paying also, that it's like, you're allowed to dehumanize someone. There's a level in all art forms where your talent dictates how much value you have as a person.
Oh, right.
Oh, wait, but I do want to read, sorry, to take it away from me for a minute. Sorry. This has been like a Katie complaining about her life fest. If any man in stand-up heard this, he'd be like, she's just not funny, and then she's blaming it on other people. But somebody in the chat said, culinary industry is cutthroat about getting ahead through earned credit as well. And I'm fascinated by this. I'm 100% certain. First of all, rap music has like the exact same structure as stand-up. So like a lot of this probably goes for musicians too. But I've heard the same thing about, like chefs and shit. Because also this is another thing where it's like, you can take classes, but no one's going to respect you as much as if you just earned your chops. If you started as a line cook and worked your way up or whatever. I'm sorry, I've never worked in the kitchen. So somebody please tell me if I am doing wrong.
No, I think you're all good. No. I was about Tim has worked in restaurants for a long time. I read a few chapters of Kitchen Confidential. Does that count for anything? No.
I should read that. I love that man.
Yes. No. Oh, and there's a documentary about Anthony Bourdain that you and I have talked about a little bit. And when that comes out, we'll have to devote an episode
on that.
Yeah. Just a reminder that this podcast in a certain sense was kind of born out of the death of Anthony Bourdain, wasn't it?
Yeah,
right?
Was.
In a certain way. Yeah. Anywho, thanks, Lane, for bringing us down.
I don't think you're bringing us down at all. That's the truth. Well, and it's because, and this is kind of drawing back into like all creativity is connected. That's why Lane and I have a hard time deciding whether to say this podcast is about the intersection of mental health and creativity or comedy, because I like to keep it a little bit more broad, because I think a lot of this, but we end up only talking about it. We can only speak through our lens. But like I don't think that's a bad thing. Why would we talk about it through any other lens?
Sure.
But I mean, like, cooking is creativity, hands down, no question. It's an art form.
Yeah. And I was going to say about music, because I was thinking, this is an idea that's kind of been percolating ever since we started talking about dues paying. But it's sort of like when you were talking about when a certain famous person, like you mentioned Ilana Glazer and right?
Yeah, no? I said her and Donald Glover.
Yeah, and Donald Glover. Yeah. Nikki
famous
Glazer,
genius.
Ilana Schlesinger.
Alana Glazer from Broad City. Nikki Glazer, I consider a genius. Eliza Schlesinger, I have notes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Gotcha. No. Okay. Yes. So them, when they get their shot and they're not ready, I was kind of thinking of it. What popped into my head was the band that gets signed to a 9-record deal and they're like 19 years old, and maybe their first album is actually decent. But then there's that term, the sophomore slump,
Yep.
which comes from now they have to crank out a second album. And it's sort of like there's an old saying, it's like, you've been working on your first album your whole life, or in stand-up, you've
Yeah.
been
Yep.
working on your first hour your whole life. And then when you do that, and now you've got to start over, it's like, oh, now I have to do the next hour. I have a year
Yep.
to do the next hour of material or the next album. And so often a band's second album is shitty. And then you go, they might have gotten their shot a little too soon. They maybe weren't ready
Yeah.
to be like an album oriented band. They kind of just had that. Well, I guess that's the one hit wonder phenomenon, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, but then I think about, I guess, in terms of bringing it back to dues paying, I remember like when Prince passed away, people talked to, and very like rightly so, people were kind of talking about how amazing he was. And I remember there was one critic, one person who said it's very easy to focus on Prince for like the larger than life sort of personality and stage presence, but as a musician, he was a technical virtuoso and had a level of mastery of guitar playing. And of course he was a multi-instrumentalist. I think on his albums, he was known to have played every instrument on a lot of his albums, except for the horns, but he played drums, bass, piano, guitar, vocals. And they said it was like just a reminder, when you appreciate Prince, think of the countless hours that he would have had to have spent from a child all through adulthood in just sheer mastery, just like the countless hours alone in a room to master each and every one of those instruments. And I think that is a certain kind of dues paying, you know what I mean, that you can't fake. When you see Prince up there playing a solo like that, it's like I can only imagine there's no shortcut to do that, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
No, for sure. Well, but the other truth is, I could never do that.
Right.
There's a shortcut insofar as you can or you can't. But on top of that, talent meets skill.
Yeah.
What's the word? And then hard work. You get what I'm saying.
In the immortal words of the great Woody Allen, Preston,
you can say what you were going to say.
You remember?
I quoted Louis C.K. And if I quote Louis C.K., you get one problematic quote. Those are the rules.
Do you know there is that Woody Allen quote? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a famous Woody Allen quote that's like 90% of life or 90% of success is just showing up. Have you ever heard that? I don't know if you've.
There's a Tina Fey quote that it's 10% talent and 90% delusion. I like that good one quite a bit as well.
That's really good. I like that a lot. That's great. No, it's funny that Woody Allen, there was a very favorable documentary on him, if you can believe that, made about 7 years ago. And in there, he's like, people attribute that quote to me all the time as though like it's something I live my life by. He was like, I was just at a deli once and there were these film students there on their laptop and they just like grabbed me and were like, what advice do you have for aspiring filmmakers? And that was just what came out of my mouth. And ever since then, everyone acts like that's like my whole philosophy on life. He's like, I don't know. I just said it at a deli 20 years ago. Anyway.
Yeah, because there's no chance. This isn't to, well, you know, I'll shit on Woody Allen for a ton of things. This isn't necessarily shitting on him. Let's be honest. Everybody who's like heralded as a genius or very successful does think they're special. It's like he says that because he wants to help these film students. But we all think we're special. We all think it. That's the secret. Everybody's secretly. Anyway.
We're all the star of our own movie.
This was probably a meandering episode. Lane
No.
Kooky crazy coming in. I don't know why I talked so much.
You did great.
You did great.
What does the chat think? I felt like this was a good one.
started naming nouns a moment ago. Someone said math and someone said bananas. Also, it was pointed out that when we were talking about chefs, we said you had to earn your chops, like pork chops.
Pork chops.
Ever heard of them?
Oh, there's a great. Actually, yeah, maybe someday I'll finish Kitchen Confidential.
Okay.
You'll read it and we could talk about it. But there is a great Anthony Bourdain line that I think I've seen quoted, and it's like, he's like, people tell me that cooking and being a chef is an art form, and he goes, it's not an art form, it's a craft. And he says this thing that I think has been quoted a lot since, but it's like the cathedrals of Europe were built by craftsmen, not by artists.
Yeah.
And he's like when a preppy rich kid fresh out of some fancy culinary school comes into one of my restaurants and is telling me his thoughts on the art form, like the culinary arts, he says, this is something I think about all the time in terms of like just reminding myself to always do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Is he says what he says to the rich kids is show up on time every day for 6 months in a row. Then you can tell me about your thoughts on the art of being a chef. And I always think of that because it's like, yeah, if I was 22, I don't know that I was on time to anything 6 months in a row.
Absolutely. No, I hear that. Well, and I feel like I paved over a lot of this with my like, this is how it's toxic. But I do think there's a lot of like validity in saying like, do not give me notes on my joke. Do not give me notes on my art form until you've done it as long like for years. Until I've seen you evidence yourself, until at least you've seen my joke more than once. Because if you're doing stand-up, you should know everyone's jokes back and forth. Not me anymore. Like again, this is like me talking about when I was doing it every night, which has not been the case in years. But
you know what I think we might be this might be an idea that I don't know if this resonates for you, but an idea that is hitting me right now is maybe the most important thing is coming up with a definition of paying dues that's right for you as an individual.
Yes.
You know, yes. Because like for me, like I try to think of paying dues in a very introspective way, as opposed to like, I'm going to think of paying dues as a way that I judge others and I'm going to be like the dues police. But instead, you know, I always think of paying dues very much like looking in the mirror. Like I think of that Anthony Bourdain quote and I kind of smile to myself and think like, it's just, always, do the work. Don't get cocky, try and be humble and just show up when you say you're going to show up. Like,
absolutely. No, I think you're right. And one thing we didn't touch on today, and maybe we do bring this back up. Well, maybe I'll listen to this episode and take notes on what we talked about and what we didn't. Because one thing I did want to talk about was like when to start asking for money. Because I think that's really important.
Oh, fuck. Yes. I like that.
A lot of the time you don't ask for money because you're paying dues, but at one point, does the dues have to start paying you back?
Yes. I like that. And you know, in a show idea that popped into my head is you have a younger brother. I have an older sister. We could talk about like birth order sometime or like kind of sibling stuff. Because don't you find that I feel like I've overheard this discussion or similar discussions multiple times in comedy venue lobbies. Is like people talking who's the oldest, who in the comedy world is an only child, is the oldest, is the youngest. And I feel like there could be something interesting in there. And there are a lot of like mental health concepts based around birth order that we could talk about. But hey, you are awesome, and it has been fun talking with you.
You too. Thank you so much to our tech, Preston, the second favorite child. Thank you to our guests in the chat, all of whom we really appreciate. Also, I like kind of half tried to engage in a conversation with the chat while we were talking, and I think I sounded like I was like, "You're wrong," but only because I was like too focused on you to like have nuance. So just know, if you're here, if we're engaging with you, we're grateful for you. We welcome your thoughts. If you comment later, we welcome your thoughts. We think all opinions are valid. If you ever want to weigh in on the topics before we talk about them, we post them on Wednesdays on all of our social media, and we're happy to read your comments. Yeah, like and subscribe on iTunes. These episodes drop on Fridays. We stream on Wednesdays through ColdTowne Theater. We'll keep you abreast of any news from them. Lane, what am I missing?
You're doing all the right things. Thank you so much. My Tylenol with codeine to help with migraines. Thanks you. I thank you. Yes, this was a fun one. Oh, happy 4th of July. I know we're all just extremely patriotic. But yeah, this has been great. I've been Lane Ingram, and thank you, Preston, and thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye. Hui.